Part 32. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 312. I didn't expect that I actually lost. Looking at the chessboard in front of him, Xiaowan pondered for a long time, and finally smiled and shook his head. I lost, and I lost completely. Because from the beginning to the end, I never thought that the sword intention of ancient secret techniques such as Qianqianji domain could actually be used for murderous purposes in the chess game. I didn't expect that there is such a connection between sword intention and chess. That's all, I'm just a remnant of my soul, guarding the only way to enter the depths of the Imperial Mausoleum. Since I won the chess game, I will naturally keep my promise. If you want to enter, just go in. Xiaowan glanced at the vast stars that were gradually disappearing. It seemed that he no longer had the youthful vigor and arrogance he once had. There was even a sense of vicissitudes of life in his eyes. When they met their opponents, Nai Chen seemed to be very satisfied with the game. He cupped his hands and said, "It is indeed a rare experience to play against the chess emperor, but I have one more question. Does the chess emperor know what happened in the Imperial Mausoleum? Since you won the chess game, I will naturally tell you everything. However, I don't know the situation inside the Imperial Mausoleum clearly, so I can only speculate." After hearing this question, Xiaowan was silent for a long time, and then replied after thinking for a while. "Ever since I left behind this remnant soul, I have been guarding this canyon, blocking others' way. I have already felt the changes in the Imperial Mausoleum today. And it seems that except for me, all the corpses and remnant souls in the entire Imperial Mausoleum have been affected. But before this, I had never seen anyone sneak into the depths of the Imperial tomb through the canyon. That is to say." When talking about this, even Xiaowan's expression changed slightly. "If I'm not wrong, all of these changes may be due to the only entrance to the Emperor's tomb besides the canyon, the underworld. I'm afraid these visions are caused by the underworld." Underworld. At this moment, even Nai Chen couldn't help but feel a trace of surprise. It is said that the underworld is the place leading to the afterlife. The souls of thousands of creatures in Lanchuan continent will go to the underworld after death, which is where they lead to the next life and the only destination they can go to. However, except for the dead souls, no living being has been able to break the door of the underworld so far. Likewise, no being from the underworld has ever reached Lanchuan continent. Unexpectedly, the strange thing that happened in the Imperial Mausoleum this time might actually be related to the underworld. At this time, the small world evolved from the mysterious chessboard has begun to slowly disappear. And Xiaowan's body seemed to begin to gradually become insubstantial. "I am willing to lose this game of chess. From now on, I will leave the mysterious chessboard to you." The mysterious chessboard slowly fell into Nai Chen's hands, but Xiaowan suddenly said, "However, you and I use dynasty changes, wars and disputes as chess pieces, but haven't we forgotten the most important thing?" "The most important thing?" Nai Chen showed a trace of doubt. "Yes, it is love. Human emotions are the most beautiful and the most cruel. Even though we haven't been in contact for a long time, I can feel the extremely sincere love between you. After all, even Emperor Kaiyuan was infected." Xiao smiled wildly, a white lotus flower as pure as an iceberg appeared in his hand, and said, "This snow lotus is said to be the flower that descended from the fairy world and has the original ability to restrain evil spirits. You have the ancient holy body and are not afraid of evil spirits. Just give this flower to her." The snow lotus slowly fell into Nai Chen's hand, and the remnant soul of Xiaowan became increasingly blurred and disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Nai Chen couldn't help but be a little surprised. So far, Xiaowan is the first person who can see the Suangu holy body on his body with the naked eye. Unexpectedly, although this chess emperor is arrogant, and even ignores the way of heaven, he really has the capital to be arrogant. See you again if we are destined. Looking at Xiao Wan's disappearing figure, Nai Chen slightly cupped his hands. See you again if we are destined. At this moment, Xiao Wan's remnant soul seemed to be smiling. As it slowly disappeared, only the last 4 words floated out. Xiao Wan's remnant soul completely disappeared in mid-air, and the vast phantoms of stars surrounding him gradually disappeared. And soon, when Nai Chen's figure reappeared, Emperor Jinming immediately stepped forward in disbelief, with a look of astonishment on his face. How on earth did you master the 10,000 sword domain? Only the masters of the past generations within my forbidden area can learn about the 10,000 sword domain. In today's world, I should be the only one who knows about it. What's more, if you want to master the 10,000 sword domain now, you must maintain a childlike body. How on earth did you? The appearance of a child has always been a pain for Emperor Jinming. It would be okay if there was no contrast, but he might be able to reluctantly accept the sacrifice of image for strength. But with Nai Chen, he couldn't bear it at all. In order to master the 10,000 swords domain, I had to practice hard for hundreds of years, even maintaining the body of a child before I could barely use it. In comparison, Nai Chen simply eliminated all the shortcomings of Qinhuan sword domain and directly used the advantages. Emperor Jinming felt extremely unbalanced in his heart. If there weren't others present, he would even be so angry that he would burst into tears. Hate it? Angry. My teeth are itching with jealousy. Why is it always Nai Chen who takes advantage of all the good things? Little friend, I have something else to do. Be good, go play for a while. However, Nai Chen seemed to have no idea of him. He pushed Emperor Jinming away and came to Chu Qingyu's side. Seeing Nai Chen, Chu Qingyu could not hide a trace of worry. After quickly hiding it, she still blamed him with resentment. You just want to show off, and actually play chess with the chess emperor. Are you going to compete with the sword emperor and the knife emperor in swordplay next? What a weird metaphor. Nai Chen smiled, knowing that this was the concern from the empress. I am not interested in these, but in addition to playing chess with the chess emperor, I am particularly interested in another one. Nai Chen suddenly said. And, what? Chu Qingyu was a little confused. After all, what he just said was just a metaphor. And, compete in love with Empress Qingyu. But at this moment, Nai Chen suddenly said. You. This sudden sentence caught Chu Qingyu off guard. Staring at Nai Chen shyly, she couldn't help but complain. This is inside the imperial mausoleum, full of dangers, and there are other great emperors nearby. How can you still have the leisure to say these things? Need I say this? Of course, compared to those, I only have you, my wife, in my eyes. Nai Chen fully demonstrated his thick skin like a city wall. While saying this, he gently inserted the snow lotus into Chu Qingyu's soft hair. This is. A wisp of refreshing fragrance came, and Chu Qingyu couldn't help but look up. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 313. This is. Chu Qingyu was slightly stunned. This is the snow lotus from the fairyland, which can remove evil spirits and purify the body. My wife, wear it. Nai Chen gently inserted the snow lotus into the black and beautiful hair. A refreshing fragrance accompanied by the abundant spiritual energy diffused, which showed how extraordinary the snow lotus was. Nai Chen also conjured up a mirror made of water mist in front of Chu Qingyu. Through the water mirror, Chu Qingyu clearly saw her own reflection in it. Bright eyes and white teeth, graceful, especially the snow lotus on the delicate little ear, which made her look even more beautiful. In short, it is very beautiful. But after thinking about it, Chu Qingyu was still a little shy and wanted to resist. Even if this flower is very precious, how can this emperor wear it on his head? Such a shameful thing. It doesn't matter. At worst, I can take it off when I leave the Imperial Mausoleum. Anyway, there is no one else now. Aren't these people all old acquaintances? As he said, Nai Chen looked at the Saint of Flowers with a bad smile. You said so, Saint. Of course, I'm used to you two showing affection. I don't mind. Of course I don't mind. The Saint of Flowers answered pitifully. It's not that she doesn't mind. It's just that these two people don't agree on the surface, but in fact they are completely of the same mind. I don't want to mind, but I dare not mind. Otherwise, what I'm waiting for in a while may be the legendary husband and wife mixed doubles. How does Emperor Pang Yuan feel? Nai Chen looked at the white-haired Emperor Pang Yuan again. Obviously, Emperor Pang Yuan is quite reasonable at such an old age. Ahem, I'm a little old, my eyes are blurry all day, I can't see anything, yes, I can't see anything at all. After coughing twice, he quickly looked away. Aolan. Nai Chen looked at Aolan again. Ao Ian's hair instantly exploded, and his tail stood up in fear. How can I tell anyone? Don't look at me, it has nothing to do with me. Then, what about you? Nai Chen's eyes finally turned to the last Emperor Jinming. But at this moment, Emperor Jinming seemed to be stupid. He had noticed the ambiguous relationship between Nai Chen and Empress Qingyu before, but he didn't dare to believe it at all. When he asked Saint Fanhua just kept it a secret and said nothing. But now, looking at the extremely intimate behavior between the two, even a fool can see it at a glance. Emperor Jinming couldn't believe that the aloof and arrogant Empress would really have a Taoist partner. Moreover, when she was with Nai Chen, she would show affection and love without any care. It turned out that he had been stuffed with so much dog food along the way. More importantly, look at his short boy body, and then look at Nai Chen's heroic and handsome height. At this moment, Emperor Jinming felt that his heart was hit by an unprecedented shock. In order to obtain the inheritance of the 10,000 swords domain, he has kept his boy body and stopped growing for 1,000 years. A great emperor, but still a boy, it is enough to make people laugh. As a result, Nai Chen not only did not pay any price, but he directly comprehended the 10,000 swords domain from nowhere. There is even, the Empress's wife? Compared to this, Nai Chen is a standard winner in life, and he is just like a clown. Emperor Jinming took a step back without saying a word. But his eyes were empty and lifeless, and his eyes lost their brilliance. Obviously, she had suffered an epic blow in her heart. Looking at the scene of Nai Chen's coercion and inducement, Chu Qingyu inadvertently smiled. There is no other person in the world who can scare 3 emperors and a dragon king like this. Forget it, I'll take this flower first, anyway, it's really beautiful. Gently touching the snow lotus on her head, Chu Qingyu said faintly. For a moment, the slightly shy King Mei face was like a snow lotus, with a different kind of beauty. Nai Chen couldn't help but smile. The two looked at each other with affection, and the flowing eyes alone were enough to be a dog abuse weapon. The Flower Saint and Aolan on the side were obviously heartbroken by the abuse. The Jinming Emperor, who was already a little broken in his heart, staggered and almost fell to the ground. After all, he has been an emperor for so many years, even with the status of an emperor. Not to mention paying attention to me, Empress Qingyu didn't even look at me once. That cold and aloof feeling seemed to be forever unattainable. But now, who would have thought that this person with a face like peach blossoms and a little shyness, and autumn eyes looking forward as if there were autumn waves, would be Empress Qingyu? Wearing the snow lotus in her hair, Chu Qing did feel its extraordinary nature. The abundant spiritual energy seemed to be constantly washing itself, as if it could remove all evil spirits. I'm afraid the value of this flower is really as Nai Chen said, it may be a relic of the fairyland. But, looking into the depths of the imperial mausoleum, Chu Qingyu finally had a trace of solemnity. Nai Chen also looked into the canyon and said seriously. According to what the chess emperor Xiao Wang said, except for this canyon, all other places have been affected. Whether it is the emperor's body or the remaining soul, I am afraid that they have been controlled. If this is the case, the situation deep in the imperial tomb may be even more pessimistic. Chu Qingyu also nodded slightly. Even outside the imperial mausoleum, tens of thousands of skeleton armies appeared. Emperor Kaiyuan's body was also revived and controlled. The situation inside the imperial mausoleum may become even more dangerous. In Lanchuan continent, a great emperor is already a transcendent existence that is proud of the world. But inside the emperor's mausoleum, those buried are the powerful emperors who once dominated the world. There are also beings like Emperor Kaiyuan. Let's go, although the monks outside can temporarily resist the skeleton's attack. But those skeletons can continue to regenerate, and if they continue, I am afraid that sooner or later they will be completely destroyed. Looking into the depths of the canyon, a faint cold aura emerged from Chu Qingyu's body. She knew very well that there might not be much time left. Before that, it is necessary to find out what is happening in the imperial mausoleum as soon as possible. The Qinglen emperor was proud of himself, walking beside Chu Qingyu, and Nai Chen also stepped out of the canyon. And deep in the imperial tomb behind the canyon, the colorful flowers and plants underfoot have long since disappeared, and the blue sky has completely turned into a terrifying scarlet color. The scene here is completely different from outside. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 314. Completely different from the scene in the canyon. The deep part of the imperial mausoleum once again turned into a bloody sky. And the scarlet bloody sky was even scarier than the sky when entering the imperial mausoleum. Not only was there a strong bloody smell in the imperial mausoleum, but the original appearance of this place had also undergone a complete earth-shaking change. In the depths of the imperial mausoleum, countless great emperors' tablets stood. As the protection of the great emperors buried here, those tablets were naturally as majestic and tall as the thrones above. Originally, every 60 years, a great emperor would personally enter the imperial mausoleum, representing many cultivators from the Lanchuan continent to reach the deepest part to worship and pay tribute to those majestic tablets. But at this moment, these tablets, which were originally covered with sacred golden light and majestic, were covered with bloody lines. Even many tablets were actually flowing with terrifying blood. Against the bloody sky, the depths of the imperial mausoleum looked even more eerie and strange. What on earth happened here? Is this really the burial place of the great emperor of mankind? Ao Ian's face was obviously a little pale. As the weakest dragon here, the strong oppression and weird feeling emanating from the imperial mausoleum have made it difficult for her to breathe. The scene deep in the imperial mausoleum is weird enough to make anyone feel cold. And at this moment, suddenly, crack, crack, accompanied by a crisp sound, something seemed to be constantly hitting the nearest tablet. The light shrouded in it was swept by the strong and trembling. Oh no, that is the formation guarding the corpse of the great emperor. How could it be hit? Emperor Jinming, who witnessed this scene, suddenly shouted in disbelief. But the situation changed in an instant, and the force that hit the tablet seemed to increase suddenly. Boom! Like the sound of broken glass, the golden lines covering the tablet finally broke in the sudden impact. And then, a bloody corpse slowly emerged from under the tablet. The eyes were filled with blood red. This should have been the corpse of an extremely handsome man, but now it was filled with a strong and terrifying blood color. The scarlet eyes looking at everyone seemed to be filled with greed and death. That is, Emperor Yuchuan. Emperor Jinming's pupils shrank suddenly. In addition to becoming an emperor, Emperor Yuchuan was also praised for his handsome appearance. Unexpectedly, now even the corpse of Emperor Yuchuan appeared from under the tombstone, and it has become so miserable. Wait. Emperor Jinming suddenly realized that something was wrong. Emperor Yuchuan could suddenly wake up, which means. Looking around, he suddenly felt a chill behind him. But at this moment, it was too late. The sound of cracking sounded one after another, and the restrictions that sealed the tablet were broken. Then, corpses began to appear from the tomb. Emperor Yuanming, Emperor Wangsuan, Emperor Yuhe. These bloody corpses, without exception, are all the corpses of emperors. The countless majestic imperial power mixed with the strange bloody feeling spread to the surroundings. Although the dead emperor only had a remnant soul left, his strength had already greatly decreased. But they were once great emperors in their lifetime, and their strength should not be underestimated. More importantly, Emperor Yifeng. At this moment, even Chu Qingyu's expression changed slightly. On a golden base, on a majestic tablet, there emerged a pressure far beyond any emperor. The hurricane began to sweep wildly, and the majestic imperial power seemed to tear everything around it apart. The corpse of an emperor, even if it has fallen, is far more powerful than the great emperor. Even if he joined forces with several other emperors, Chu Qingyu was not sure to defeat them, not to mention the other emperors who continued to emerge. Who is controlling these emperor corpses? In such a situation, only calm analysis can find a way out. Nichien's eyes were covered with a layer of golden light, and he used his spiritual pupils to observe the surroundings. In addition to the emperor corpses that continued to emerge, Nichien's eyes flashed, and suddenly focused on the blood-colored gate in the center of all the tombs. The blocked gate seemed to be the end. But when he touched the spiritual pupil, although he could not see the specific scene behind the door, he felt that there was a cave behind the door. So that's it? A smile appeared on Nichien's lips. Oh no, they started to act. At this moment, Emperor Jinming had already shouted. It seemed that he had noticed the intruder, accompanied by the roar of a corpse of an emperor. The other emperors suddenly burst out with a fierce power and suddenly came here. Even the stiff body of Emperor Yifeng swept his eyes here. There is no time. The only way out now is to rush through that gate. Nichien glanced at Emperor Jinming. What? Are you kidding me? Emperor Jinming was stunned for a moment. How can we defeat so many emperors' corpses? Besides, this is the end of the emperor's mausoleum. What's the point of rushing through? Are you going to die? However, Nichien ignored his intention. He grabbed Chu Qingyu's wrist and took a step towards the deepest part of the imperial mausoleum. Chu Qingyu was slightly stunned. Even though she didn't know what Nichien wanted to do, she knew what he wanted to do, but she didn't even ask. A bamboo sword dotted with ink appeared in his hand, exuding a cold imperial power. Some emperors had been stopped by Saint Fanhua and Emperor Pangyuan. But the rest of the emperors still surrounded the two. Since you are dead, just lie down in the grave. A hint of coldness flashed in Chu Qingyu's eyes, and a sword suddenly came out. The sword energy was awe-inspiring, like snow in midwinter. In an instant, the bodies of the two emperors were cut off directly. Surrounded by layers of people, Chu Qingyu was not afraid at all, and swept across with the sword. Boom! The majestic sword energy contained endless coldness. Even with the emperor's body as a shield, two more emperors were frozen into frost in an instant. Under two swords, 4 emperors fell. Even though they have become corpses and their strength has been greatly reduced, there are probably no more than a handful of people in the entire Lanchuan continent who can do this. In the blood-red sky, a golden finger with a majestic power fell down. The emperor points. Next to Chu Qingyu, Nichien also suddenly killed a corpse of the emperor with one finger. At this moment, a road was torn out from the door hidden at the end. Shock, the love letter was sent to the empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 315. The two men's attacks were too harsh and decisive, and in an instant, they forcibly tore a rift in the midst of countless corpses of the emperor. Aolan, transform. Nai Chen immediately issued the order. Ouch Wu. Ao Ian's body was covered with a layer of golden light, and he instantly transformed into a dragon shape. Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu jumped up and landed on Aolan. Wait for me. The flower saint quickly caught up, but because she was a little slow, she could only grab Ao Ian's tail and fly into the sky with her. It hurts, there, don't do it. Aolan screamed several times in pain from being pulled. But the situation is critical now, but we can only endure it for now. What about me? Emperor Jinming on the ground was completely stunned. When he came back to his senses, only he and Emperor Pang Yuan were left. Hey, wait for me. Having just been fed a mouthful of dog food, and now being cruelly abandoned, Emperor Jinming simply didn't know what evil he had done. However, the corpses of the emperor were surrounded one after another, making it impossible for him to break through the siege. Damn it, Nai Chen, just wait for me, I will definitely take revenge. Emperor Jinming could only shout helplessly, but he was already unable to move forward. He could only try to break through the encirclement and slowly retreat towards the canyon behind him. Ao Ian's speed has been significantly improved after entering the sea opening realm. With the innate advantage of being a dragon, even the powerful emperor cannot catch up with her speed. In the blink of an eye, the encirclement of many great emperor corpses had been broken through. There is only the last distance left before the door. But at this moment, the space in front of him suddenly distorted and shook. An extremely powerful tornado suddenly swept across. The strong wind pressure seemed to drag everything into it. And in the center of the tornado, Emperor Yifeng stepped out of it. He was actually able to control the power of space within the imperial mausoleum. Chu Qingyu's eyes couldn't help but change. Although the powerful emperor can control the power of space, countless space distances. But in the imperial tomb, all laws regarding space are restricted. Even if you are yourself, you can't use it at all. Unexpectedly, Emperor Zun's corpse could actually do this despite obstacles in the emperor's mausoleum. Seeing the door that was almost close at hand, at this moment, the space in front of him was constantly distorted by the hurricane. The body of Emperor Yifeng was also blocked in front. It's like a towering mountain that cannot be broken through. At the rear, under the siege of countless emperor corpses, Emperor Jinming and Emperor Pang Yuan were completely unable to resist and were ready to retreat into the canyon. More and more of the emperor's corpses turned to have empty, blood-colored eyes, and their bodies stiffly surrounded Aolan. Honey, sit tight, get ready to speed up. In this critical situation, Nai Chen whispered softly into Chu Qingyu's ear. Then, he looked at the flower saint who was holding Ao Ian's tail, and raised his voice slightly. Saint, hold on tight, be careful not to fall. A sound came from the messy and howling wind. The flower saint was stunned for a moment, but she couldn't understand it. Ao Ian's speed has reached the extreme, even surpassing the speed of the powerful emperor. How can he speed up? But at this time, Nai Chen's eyes were already looking at Emperor Yifeng who was blocking him in front. The realm of calamity, the position of emperor. Even though the body is dead and the remaining soul has dispersed, the terrifying strength of Emperor Yifeng's corpse is completely beyond the reach of even the living emperor. But suddenly, the golden giant's Dharma image appeared in the sky, which was exactly the Dharma image from Nai Chen. Like the pressure of a mountain, the golden giant crushed down, and the shadow of the giant palm enveloped Emperor Yifeng. Although the scene of golden light filling the sky was extremely vast, with howling winds sweeping across it, when Emperor Yifeng looked at the sky with his blood-red eyes, the golden giant suddenly stopped. It's so strong that it can't move even an inch. This is the terrifying thing about Emperor Zun. Even if his body is dead, a mere Dharma form cannot pose any threat to him at all. Emperor Yifeng pointed out a finger casually. The moment his fingers came into contact, the strong wind cut through the space like thousands of blades, and also targeted the virtual image of the golden giant. A hurricane swept across, and in an instant, Nai Chen's Dharma image disintegrated and was shattered into golden light that dissipated in the wind. An imperial bell rang from the horizon, and Chu Qingyu quickly took action to block the remaining power of the attack. Countless hurricanes roared in the air, as if they were going to tear the entire imperial mausoleum into pieces. Emperor Yifeng just stood there, but he was like a god descending from the world, insurmountable. The sweeping wind roared like a wild beast. Under the strong majesty, even the emperor's corpse felt an inexplicable fear. This was a terrifying pressure that even crossed the canyon, causing the monks who were still fighting fiercely with the skeleton army to look into the distance in astonishment. The power of the emperor. Deep in the emperor's mausoleum, there is actually an emperor's body that has revived. For a moment, many people turned pale, and fear and panic filled their hearts. Oops, if the emperor's body is revived, even Empress Qingyu may not be able to deal with it. Because only the deepest part of the imperial tomb is where many great emperors are buried. Even though they had no idea what was happening in the depths of the canyon, all the cultivators were shocked and worried. Deep in the imperial mausoleum. After the sound of an imperial bell dissolved the attack of Emperor Yifeng. The scarlet eyes were firmly locked on Ao Ian's dragon body. Although his eyes were empty and lifeless, his forehead seemed to be mixed with a trace of hostility. Roar! The Emperor Yifeng, who once stood proudly on the top of Lanchuan continent, actually let out a roar like a beast. Endless pressure turned into a gust of wind and swept in all directions. He seemed to be completely angry. The corpses of the emperors kept flying into the sky and surrounded them. If this continued, they would be trapped in the encirclement sooner or later. However, Nai Chen seemed to have expected it. At the moment when Emperor Yifeng paused, the mysterious chessboard suddenly emerged from his hand. In an instant, an extremely huge phantom completely enveloped Emperor Yifeng. The small world evolved from the chess path trapped him in it. Roar! The Yifeng Emperor, who realized that he was restricted, was obviously more angry and raised his palm to break through. But Nai Chen had expected it. 10,000 sword domains. His eyes were as sharp as swords, but the moment Nai Chen locked onto the Yifeng Emperor, tens of millions of sword blades appeared in the small world. Some were inserted into the soil, some fell from the sky, and some slowly emerged. At this moment, a dignified emperor was trapped in it. And Nai Chen's finger also touched the position he had already chosen on Aolan. Ying. Suddenly, Aolan made an unbearable sound. The speed, suddenly increased. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 316. Too much. A tingling sensation flowed through her body like an electric current, making Aolan feel comfortable. But for some reason, her dragon-shaped face couldn't help but turn slightly red. Why can you always find such a weird acupuncture point? More importantly, even Aolan didn't know that there was such a strange acupuncture point on her body. And as if it was full of electricity, after a strange feeling flowed through her body, Aolan actually felt that her speed had also been greatly improved. Swoosh! The wind passed by, and Ao Ian's speed increased several times in an instant. So fast, so fast, so fast. Chu Qingyu, who was sitting on the dragon, sat softly in Nai Chen's arms. Not only were the two not affected at all, but they felt very comfortable in the cool wind. But the flower saint who grabbed Ao Ian's dragon tail was completely different. The situation inside the imperial mausoleum was extremely strange. Not only could the space method not be used, but even flying in the wind would be under extremely great pressure. So she never had the chance to sit on Aolan and squeeze with Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu. Originally, it was not bad, but the sudden acceleration caught the Saint of Flowers off guard. The hurricane kept passing by quickly from both sides, and the golden hair was constantly fluttering in the wind, and even the thin dress was constantly shaking in the wind. And the most important thing is, being in the sky, the Saint of Flowers used all her strength to hold down the skirt with her other hand, and her pretty face was almost completely red. After all, if she couldn't hold it down. Nai-chen, I hate you. Unfortunately, the Saint of Flowers' shout soon became messy in the wind and scattered with the wind. As Aoian's speed increased suddenly, the corpses of the emperors who failed to react missed the best opportunity. The originally extremely tight encirclement was actually torn open by force. The hurricane that swept around was easily swept away, and the last door was already in front of them. Emperor Yifeng was still firmly trapped in the small world evolved by the Suanji chessboard. He was obviously angry and kept trying to break free to stop Nai-chen and others from moving forward. The terrifying power of the emperor was far beyond imagination. Even if the Suanji chessboard was of extremely high grade, it was difficult to control it completely. Time was running out. Wife, let's get ready together. Looking at the seemingly solid door, Nai-chen said loudly. Yeah. Chu Qingyu nodded slightly, exuding a hint of coldness. Aoian's speed was still slowly increasing, and he was getting closer and closer to the door. From other angles, it seemed that he was about to hit the door. And at this moment, Nai-chen suddenly emerged with a majestic aura. White Feather Dharma Image. The White Feather Dharma Image from the System Mall and the Golden Dharma Image summoned by himself appeared in the air at the same time. The two Dharma images did their best to crush down without hesitation. And Chu Qingyu also took action at this moment. A sword was slashed out, and the sky-high sword light was wrapped in endless chill, slashing towards the gate. The awe-inspiring imperial power of this sword seemed to be able to condense everything into ice, and then completely tear it apart. Flower Saint Elephant. Without any communication, the Flower Saint, who grabbed Aoian's dragon tail with one hand and covered her skirt with the other hand in shame, also shouted out in shame and anger. The light in the sky was bright and the pressure was overwhelming. The combined force of the three people actually crushed at the same time. Two emperors, plus Nai-chen's terrifying power that was far beyond the same realm. The tyrannical impact force actually made the gate shake instantly. Try harder. As Nai-chen raised his finger, the golden Dharma image burst out with all his strength. Finally, the door was actually opened a crack, and the seal runes flowing on it were also broken in a short time. This kind of opportunity must be seized. Those mysterious lines kept communicating with each other, and stretched out silk threads as if to repair the connection and close the door again. But in this extremely short gap, Aolan also completely burst out at full speed. A dragon roar echoed in the depths of the Imperial Mausoleum. Although the gap opened by the door was getting smaller and smaller, Aolan burst out with unprecedented speed. Roar! Just before the door was about to close, Aolan actually seized the opportunity and rushed directly into it. Bang! The door suddenly closed, and Aolan finally succeeded in entering. Only the Flower Saint who was originally holding Aoian's tail fell behind. The moment the door closed, people entered it. But the precious embroidered shoes on her feet were directly clamped. Ouch! The Flower Saint stumbled and rolled down. The embroidered shoes were clamped by the door, and her body rolled a few times and fell to the ground. A crystal white jade foot was bare, and there was no shoe. Finally got in, whoa! The nose of the Saint of Flowers felt sore, and she almost cried. As a saint of the Holy Land, a powerful emperor, she had never been so embarrassed except when she was bullied by Chu Qingyu. Now her shoes are gone, and she almost exposed herself just now. This trip to the Emperor's mausoleum is too difficult. Saint, calm down. Nai-chen was also amused by the pitiful look of Saint of Flowers, and couldn't help but comfort her. After all, she didn't even have time to sit on Aoian's body. She was suspended in the air in the dangerous imperial mausoleum. It was indeed a bit miserable. I don't know what kind of physique the Saint of Flowers is. She obviously inherited the sacred majesty of the Saint of the Holy Land, so why does it seem that she is the one who gets hurt every time? Aolan also turned into a human form and hurriedly touched his little dragon tail. The Saint of Flowers was so pitiful just now, but her tail was being pulled all the time, and she was also in great pain. Looking at each other with tears in their eyes, the Saint of Flowers and Aolan felt sorry for each other and wanted to hug each other and cry. Roar! At this moment, the Emperor Yifeng outside roared and completely broke free from the shackles of the Suanji chessboard. Under his leadership, many corpses of the emperors continued to rush to the gate. But when they arrived at the gate, they stopped at the same time. Even Emperor Yifeng, who was leading all the emperors in front, also stopped. His blood-red eyes stared at the gate, but he did not move forward. It seems that they will not enter this door. Nai-Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the situation was as he expected. But, however, what exactly caused such a change in the imperial mausoleum? Nai-Chen and Chu Qingyu looked around at the same time. The gate was pitch black, as cold as the abyss. And in the deepest darkness, Nai-Chen finally saw a ray of light. A small golden ball flashed with holy light, and golden liquid slowly flowed down. But now, this golden ball seemed to be corroded, revealing strands of scarlet blood. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 317. It seems that the operation in the Imperial Mausoleum originally relied on this thing. Looking at the jade bead with a faint golden glow, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but fall into thought. The Emperor's body in the Imperial Mausoleum is immortal, and a trace of residual soul is retained for future generations, which seems to rely on the mystery behind this door. A closer look reveals that under this jade bead with golden light is the altar. The circular altar is divided into 12 parts, engraved with ancient and difficult to recognize characters. The golden lines and ancient characters flow slowly, and the breath they exude is extremely mysterious. I'm afraid that several emperors used ancient secret methods to cast it in an extremely mysterious way at the same time. But this treasure that maintains the order in the Imperial Mausoleum is now polluted. The blood color seems to be someone who deliberately wants to make the Imperial Mausoleum look like this. He tried to revive the corpse of the Emperor in the Imperial Mausoleum and run away, and finally. Chu Qingyu's face clearly revealed a trace of solemnity. Although the revived corpses of the Emperors are still in the Imperial Mausoleum, if the situation continues like this, it will probably not be long before the corpses will break through the Imperial Mausoleum and appear in Lanchuan continent. Even if there are only corpses and a polluted remnant soul left, the strength of the Emperor is too terrifying. Once the corpses of the Emperors in the Imperial Mausoleum break through the Imperial Mausoleum, it will probably be enough to bring a devastating disaster to Lanchuan continent. At this moment, Chu Qingyu suddenly felt a strange breath near the jade. This is. With a layer of light blue light in her eyes, Chu Qingyu looked into the darkness behind the altar. But suddenly, even her cold face could not help but show a slight surprise. Through the cracks in the darkness, there was a trace of breath coming. And this breath made Chu Qingyu feel a sense of familiarity. This is, a breath similar to that of Yuqian, the breath of the underworld. The breath of the underworld. Could it be that what happened in the Emperor's mausoleum is related to the underworld? The Saint of Flowers could not help but say in astonishment, she also felt the strange feeling that seemed to come from the netherworld. If no one discovered the things in the Emperor's mausoleum in time and stopped it, I am afraid that the corpses of the Emperors would soon break free and enter the Lanchuan continent. And by then, it would cause a devastating blow to the Lanchuan continent. Who on earth is it that has been used as a pawn in the calculation of the underworld, the Emperor's mausoleum and the entire Lanchuan continent, and even intends to destroy the entire Lanchuan continent in this way? This behavior really makes people feel cold in their hearts. Wait, this 7-color source stone. At the same time, Nai Chen also noticed the broken mouth of the altar that exuded the breath of the deep underworld, and saw the strangeness in it. Nai Chen frowned slightly, and soon made up his mind and took out the 7-color source stone from his arms. The 7-color source stone exuded a brilliant light and slowly floated to the deepest part of the altar in the dark environment. The cracked hole that was flowing with the breath of the underworld seemed to fit perfectly, just in time to accommodate the 7-color source stone. It was embedded in it without any flaws. When the 7-color source stone was embedded in it, the scene in the dark place suddenly changed. The dark space twisted and shook, as if it contained extremely mysterious power. The light kept changing, and with the surge like flowing water, the 7-color light was so bright that it actually turned into a colorful door in the darkness. And the breath from the underworld kept flowing out of this colorful door. No wonder the 7-color source stone suddenly landed in the forbidden area. It turned out that someone used this 7-color source stone to enter the Imperial Mausoleum, and then lost it because of the randomness of space. Nai Chen's eyes changed slightly, and he soon saw the cause and effect. I didn't expect that the person who destroyed the Imperial Mausoleum was actually from the underworld. Chu Qingyu stared at the door to the underworld with a bit of coldness in her eyes. Without the 7-colored source stone from the underworld, even the great emperors could not easily enter the underworld. But now, this door has been opened. The situation inside the Imperial Mausoleum is obviously not optimistic, no matter how strong the barrier of the Imperial Mausoleum is. With so many corpses of the great emperors revived, I am afraid that within half a month, they will break the barrier and go to Lanchuan continent. By then, the entire Lanchuan continent will be completely in chaos, and may even suffer a catastrophe. It seems that we must go to the underworld and find out this person who has evil intentions against Lanchuan continent. He actually wants to sacrifice the entire Lanchuan continent. Even in the underworld, this person is probably a great disaster. Ding, release the system task, go to the underworld to spend a honeymoon with the Empress, and solve the troublemakers of the Imperial Mausoleum. System reward, promotion to the Cauldron Realm, the realm of the Great Emperor. At this moment, the system voice suddenly sounded. Promote to the realm of the Great Emperor. This reward made Nai Chen feel a little excited for a moment. As his strength continued to improve, he was only one step away from the waiting realm. But it was this threshold that was extremely difficult to cross. From ancient times to the present, how many cultivators have tried their best and put all their hopes into their lives to cross this step? But this step is so difficult. If one can cross the gap and reach the waiting realm, he can be an emperor in one place, look down on the world, and have unlimited majesty. But if you can't pass through, you are almost doomed to die, or even no body will be left. For thousands of years, countless cultivators have walked on this road, but countless people have died halfway with hatred. Even with the help of the system, it has been a long time since I took the last step to the Emperor realm, and it is difficult to take a step. Unexpectedly, this moment will appear at this time. Sure enough, although the Imperial Mausoleum is dangerous and unpredictable, it is an excellent opportunity. However, thinking back to what Nai Chen said just now, Nai Chen was a little embarrassed. There is no problem in solving the cause of the chaos in the Imperial Mausoleum, but the key question is, why spend a honeymoon with the Empress and then solve it by the way? The gate formed by the colorful light can already vaguely see the scene inside. The dark blue sky and the souls floating above the earth. There seems to be the underworld. Wait for a moment, my wife. I have one more thing to do before I leave. Nai Chen did not go directly to the Imperial Mausoleum, but checked the panel of the system reward just now. Congratulations to the host for successfully suppressing Emperor Yifeng. System reward, spell range and power, 100 times increase. The aura emanating from his body continued to surge, becoming extremely majestic. Nai-Chen turned his head and looked at the imperial mausoleum outside the two gates. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 318. It's over. If this continues, we will be completely unable to resist. At the entrance of the Emperor's mausoleum, the monks looked at the skeleton army that came in one after another, and they showed a trace of fear. The situation has begun to get worse and worse. Since the four emperors entered the depths of the Emperor's mausoleum, the speed at which the skeletons emerged has gradually accelerated. The strength of these skeletons is extremely terrifying. The skeletons are extremely hard and extremely difficult to destroy. The weapons held by each skeleton soldier are of extremely high grade, as if they were buried with the Emperor. In addition, they are not afraid of life and death, and have strong offensiveness. The strength of each skeleton soldier is not even inferior to that of the Xianyuan realm monks. Xianyuan realm. The monks who have reached the Xianyuan realm can already be immortal for 1,000 years and serve as the elders of a sect. Even though the monks who entered the Emperor's mausoleum at this moment are all elites among the various sects in the world, they are still a little tired of dealing with the skeleton army that is enough to rival the Xianyuan realm. More importantly, what frightened them most was not just the strength of these skeletons. The ground was constantly torn apart, and these skeleton armies seemed to be endless and climbed out of the cracks. No matter how they were killed, they could not be killed. Not only did new skeleton soldiers emerge one after another, but those skeletons that were finally cut off were still condensing their bodies with broken bones. Monks were constantly injured or killed, and many of the magic weapons and elixirs they brought were almost damaged and consumed. Looking at the skeleton army in front of them that was increasing instead of decreasing, their state of mind was strongly affected. This kind of opponent that could not be killed at all made it impossible for them to see any dawn of victory. With the increase of the skeleton army, the Lanchuan continent, which had originally had the upper hand under the suppression of numbers and spells, has begun to gradually fall into the encirclement. Laiyan Temple, Jingkai Mountain, Jianzhong Mountain, Yongsuan Gate, and even the Nandu dynasty. These sects or dynasty forces are already in danger and can't take care of themselves. The Empress and other emperors are still deep in the imperial mausoleum. If we retreat now, they may be attacked from both sides. But if we don't retreat, I'm afraid we will all die here. As the situation became more and more critical, many people had already started arguing. Even the elders of Tianyunhal and Master Fenwen, who were able to barely play the backbone, were completely unable to control the situation. The monks were almost divided into two factions. Some people wanted to evacuate as soon as possible, while others wanted to continue to defend here. During the dispute alone, some people were unable to resist due to exhaustion and fell into the siege of the skeleton army and were torn to pieces. Oh no, we've been trapped. Amid the screams, someone suddenly looked around with a look of astonishment. They suddenly realized that the skeleton army, which seemed to be extremely slow, had quietly opened a siege without knowing when. The eyes of these skeleton soldiers flashed red, and the bloodthirsty murderous aura became stronger. The encirclement kept shrinking, and it was as unbreakable as a copper wall and iron wall. Let me out, I want to go back. Several young monks tried their best to escape, but not only did they fail to break through the encirclement, they were hit by bones halfway through the flight and fell heavily to the ground. In their terrified eyes, they were already locked by the skeletons one by one. The scarlet eyes were full of greed for prey. Ah! Blood and flesh splattered, and several monks who tried to escape were all torn to pieces and completely devoured. Suddenly, miserable cries and a strong bloody smell spread. Many monks were torn to pieces by teeth in front of everyone. And facing the army of bones that was still increasing and killing intent was getting stronger, No one dared to step forward to rescue them. They could only watch these living fellow brothers or acquaintances being torn to pieces and devoured. The impact of such a scene was hard to bear even for a cultivator who had cultivated his mind. In an instant, the emotion of fear continued to spread. Originally, just resisting these white-bone soldiers had already done their best, but now, they couldn't even break through the encirclement. The encirclement was still shrinking, and the wind was blowing, as if there were ghosts crying constantly. Looking at the scene in front of them, countless cultivators felt a chill behind them. If this continues, we will all die here. But, how can we rush out? The bodies of those monsters can't be cut off at all. More and more shouts were heard, and a large number of cultivators had been killed by skeletons. But as the encirclement gradually shrank, in addition to the emotion of fear, no one could break through the siege. Looking at each other, there was even an atmosphere of despair. Countless people looked at the bloody sky and the surging skeleton army in astonishment, and despair began to fill their pupils. Who will save us? Desperate cries echoed in the imperial mausoleum, but the approaching army of bones seemed to have no emotions at all. Some were just greedy eyes that wanted to devour flesh and blood. Many disciples with weaker Deo hearts had pale faces, and their Deo hearts were torn open. Looking at this horrible scene in shock, their legs softened and they fell to the ground. To be qualified to come to the emperor's mausoleum, each of these monks is a powerful man with the qualifications of an immortal seedling. They never thought that the imperial mausoleum would be so terrifying. It may even cause everyone to die here. Even the mighty holy emperor cannot deal with the army of skeletons that are constantly surrounding them. Who else can save them? If no miracle happens, I'm afraid, everyone will die here today. Despair seems to have filled the hearts of countless people. But just behind the deep gate of the imperial mausoleum that no one knew about, Nichen's eyes flashed with a faint golden light, and he had already noticed the situation here. Check the system rewards just now. 100 times increase, can increase the spell intensity and range by 100 times. Nichen smiled slightly, seemingly confident. But at this moment, a layer of dark clouds actually appeared on the sky that seemed to become scarier under the aura of despair. And in the dark clouds, thunder is brewing. Each thunderbolt seemed to become more terrifying as time went by. Black clouds were pressing down on the city, and the terrifying power contained in the clouds seemed to be crushing the entire sky. What on earth is this? Suddenly, the monks who had fallen into despair suddenly raised their heads. Because the thunder in the clouds did not come from the aura of despair coming from the imperial mausoleum. But, there are human monks taking action. Shock, the love letter was sent to the empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 319. Watching the skeleton army's encirclement gradually shrink, people were injured and fell to the ground, looking at the ugly skeletons that were devouring them in horror. But at this moment, the dark clouds that seemed to have been hidden for a long time suddenly sounded thunder. The thunder was like the roar of a majestic beast, but it was mixed with a sense of holiness. The dazzling lightning almost completely illuminated the blood-red sky. Thunder continued to brew terrifying power in the clouds, which was mighty and terrifying. At this moment, even the skeletons looked up at the sky, and their blood-red eyes were full of astonishment. Wait, that's the breath of senior brother Nai. Suddenly, a disciple of Tianyunhal shouted in astonishment. Because in this thunder, they actually felt a breath very similar to Nichen. And it was almost completely certain that this thunder came from Nichen. You said it was Nichen? How is it possible? Hasn't he entered the waiting realm yet? What's more, the terrifying degree of this thunder is difficult for even the emperor to use. The cultivators of other sects couldn't believe it at all. The terrifying power contained in the thunder made them clearly feel the tremor from the bottom of their hearts. No one dared to believe that a cultivator in the Baha'i realm could use such a terrible thunder method. 10,000 thunders, 100 times amplification. At this moment, Nai Chen in the depths of the emperor's mausoleum had closed his eyes slightly, and his spiritual power suddenly surged. Although the 10,000 thunders from the Thunder Emperor were powerful, they could not easily destroy these undead things in the emperor's mausoleum. But after 100 times amplification, the 10,000 thunders have undergone a leap-forward qualitative change in both power and strength. Outside the entire canyon, the bloody sky at the entrance of the emperor's mausoleum was almost completely filled with lightning. The thunder surging in the clouds made a sound far more majestic and terrifying than the roar of a dragon. Roar. As if completely enraged, countless skeleton armies also roared and rushed towards the monks of Lanchuan continent angrily. The encirclement continued to shrink, and the roaring skeleton soldiers were filled with blood. The bones on their bodies were indestructible, and their combat power was enough to rival the Xianyuan realm monks. Coupled with the number that was enough to make people's scalps numb, such a scene was enough to make anyone feel cold in their hearts and fearful. But at this moment, suddenly, the thunder that had been brewing for a long time finally thundered down. 1. No, 1, 2, 3, it was a thunder that evolved into tens of millions of thunders. Looking at the sky, for a moment, countless monks were shocked at the same time. Split from the initial thunder, tens of millions of thunders thundered down, and the strong lightning almost completely illuminated the entire sky. No one could imagine that the power of thunder magic could be so terrifying. Boom! Thousands of thunders thundered down and landed directly in the army of bones. The loud sound that resounded through the heaven and earth echoed in the imperial mausoleum, in the astonished eyes of countless cultivators in Lanchuan continent. They actually saw clearly that all the skeleton army was swallowed up by the endless thunder. The earth shook and the imperial mausoleum trembled. And those skeleton soldiers who seemed indestructible and extremely difficult to defeat were hit hard in an instant after enduring such a terrifying thunder. Boom! Countless bones were directly shattered, and the bodies of countless skeleton soldiers were directly annihilated into ashes. Even if they wanted to rush towards the cultivators of Lanchuan continent. But before they could take the next step, the thunder with terrifying power suddenly thundered down. No matter how tough the body is, it will be shattered in an instant under this thunder. In just a blink of an eye, the skeleton army that had been surging and almost forced the monks of Lanchuan continent into a desperate situation was killed or injured by more than half. Only a very small number of skeleton soldiers could barely support their bodies. But the bodies made of white bones had already become broken and shattered under the bombardment of thunder, and even movement had become extremely difficult. This feeling of spiritual energy and thousands of thunders, it's really Brother Nai. For a moment, all the disciples of Tianyunhal felt their eyes moist. They knew very well that if the situation just now continued like this, I am afraid that all those who entered the imperial mausoleum would not be able to break through the siege and die here. It was Nai Chen who saved them, and even the lives of all the monks who entered the imperial mausoleum. Even many monks of Lanchuan continent were a little stunned at this moment. I didn't expect that it was Nai Chen who saved us. The thousands of thunders from Emperor Lei Yan, but how did he exert such terrifying power with the strength of the sea-breaking realm? No matter what, now is the time for us to fight back. Looking at the canyon with a trace of gratitude, the monks gathered their strength and stood up again. Skeletons have begun to slowly climb out from the ground again, but they know very well that this is the best time to fight back. The original skeleton army has almost been destroyed by thunder. At this moment, the human monks have completely gained the upper hand, and they must completely prevent those skeleton soldiers from growing wildly like before. Thank you, Senior Brother Nai, we will definitely do our best. Kill all these things back to repay Senior Brother Nai's kindness. For a moment, the crowd was excited, and all the cultivators felt their blood boiling. Holding the magic weapon, they completely swept away the fatigue just now. With the thunder still rolling in the air, they shouted loudly and rushed forward. Kill! In the imperial mausoleum, the cultivators of Lanchuan continent no longer had any fear, and their momentum was even higher than when they just entered the imperial mausoleum. At this moment, Nai Chen in the depths of the imperial mausoleum slowly opened his eyes. Even the breath he exhaled seemed to contain a trace of thunder. With thousands of thunders amplified 100 times, the terrifying scene just now was probably completely irresistible even if the skeleton army in the imperial mausoleum was so powerful. However, next, after solving the matter in the imperial mausoleum, Nai Chen also looked at the door transformed by the seven-colored source stone, leading to the extremely mysterious underworld. And the one who secretly manipulated and tried to cause a riot in the imperial mausoleum and bring chaos to the entire Chuan continent is probably hiding in the underworld. Let's go, wife. I want to see what the underworld is like. Nai Chen smiled slightly, stood up, and came to the colorful door leading to the underworld. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 320. Underworld. Looking at the colorful neon entrance, Chu Qingyu's eyes paused slightly. In addition to entering the underworld to find the existence that caused the riot in the imperial mausoleum, there is also an old friend in the underworld who has not been seen for a long time, the princess of the underworld, Yuqian. Maybe, I will really see her. A relieved smile appeared on the corner of Chu Qingyu's mouth. Let's go. Take a step forward. Chu Qingyu actually took the initiative to hold Nai Chen's hand. 10 fingers interlocked, as if they could feel the warmth between each other. Chu Qingyu lowered her head slightly, as if she was enjoying the warmth and sweetness of holding hands with Nai Chen. Let's go. I have never seen what the underworld as the city of death looks like. Nai Chen also smiled slightly, and the two walked to the door. Is it so careless? That's the underworld. The Saint of Flowers was obviously a little panicked. After all, before this, she had never heard of rumors about living beings entering the underworld. It would be perfect if you didn't leave. That way, there would be one less light bulb. Glancing at the slightly cowardly Saintess of Flowers and Aolan, Nai Chen smiled and teased. Of course I'm leaving. Don't leave me behind. Saintess of Flowers didn't dare to hesitate any longer. She hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed the corner of Chu Qingyu's clothes. This is full of corpses of various emperors. I'd rather be a light bulb than stay here. Aolan also hurriedly stepped forward and tightly grabbed Nai Chen's clothes. Obviously, the terrible scene in the imperial mausoleum had a strong impact on her young mind, which was only 200 years old. At this moment, the light transformed by the seven-color source stone also enveloped the three people and the dragon. The space twisted and vibrated, as if it was leading to the other side. As the space twisted and changed, Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu's bodies gradually became ethereal and were gradually sinking into the void. But Saintess of Flowers and Aolan suddenly realized that their bodies had not changed at all. When they touched the seven-color door, they even seemed to be rejected and bounced back. No, what's going on? The Flower Saint and Aolan realized the seriousness of the problem at the same time. They could already feel that Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu were about to cross the void and go to the underworld under the law of this door. But they were rejected and could not pass through this door at all. Strange, can't we pass through? Why? Nai Chen turned around with a little doubt. Sure enough, he soon felt the strong rejection of the Flower Saint and Aolan. Then why can he and the Empress? Thinking, Nai Chen suddenly realized that in front of the door formed by the seven-color source stone, he was unconsciously emitting a sacred and dazzling golden light. And the snow-white lotus on Chu Qingyu's head also bloomed with a pure and flawless brilliance. Could it be that I can pass through this door because of the Xiangu saint body, and the Empress relied on the lotus given by Xiao Wang? It seems that it should be the protection of the evil spirits that can be accepted into the underworld. Obviously, the Saint of Flowers and Aolan did not. It's a bit regrettable. It seems that you can't go this time. Then we'll see each other when we come back from the underworld. Nai-Chen sighed in a fake way, but there was a hint of smile on his lips. Liar. How can you regret it? You are obviously excited about losing 2 light bulbs. Liar, you obviously want to secretly go on a honeymoon with the Empress without light bulbs. The Saint of Flowers wanted to cry but had no tears. Aolan also hurriedly poked at the colorful door that was gradually disappearing in front of him. But he found that no matter what he did, the door had no intention of accommodating himself and the Saint of Flowers. And the figures of Nai-Chen and Chu Qingyu gradually became blurred, and they were almost completely swallowed up. By, Saint and Aolan must be careful to stay here honestly. There are corpses of the Emperor outside the door. If you accidentally let them in, the consequences will be disastrous. Nai-Chen smiled and waved his hand, admonishing. A ray of light enveloped them, and they disappeared into the colorful gate together with Chu Qingyu. Too much. Saint Fanhua and Aolan looked at each other with tears in their eyes. They never thought that things would turn out like this. Nai-Chen and Chu Qingyu went to the underworld for a sweet honeymoon, but they were trapped here and could not move at all. Bang, bang, bang. At this moment, the door was knocked. Obviously, the corpses of the emperors sensed the breath of living people inside. Although it was clear that there seemed to be an absolute ban on this door, the corpses of the emperors could not come in anyway. Listening to the constant knocking, the frightened Saint Fanhua and Aolan hugged each other and shivered. One person and one dragon, they could only hug each other for warmth. Saint, I also want to go on a honeymoon. Aolan was in tears, and he had never been so wronged. Who wouldn't want to? These 2 people are really too much. Even the Saint of Flowers cried out with tears in her eyes. But soon, the increasingly frequent banging of the door drowned out her words. 1 man and 1 dragon, so pitiful. Ding, successfully collected a tear of Dragon King Aolan. Successfully collected a tear of the Great Emperor, Saint of Flowers. Get system reward, Ghost Chi Concealment, which can conceal the breath of living creatures on the host, making it impossible for ghosts to distinguish the host's identity. In the chaos, the system voice sounded. This time, the space law was directly used to cross the 2 worlds, so the distortion and vibration of the space were extremely serious. After passing through that door, Nai-Chen was also greatly affected. It took a long time for the chaos to recover. Slowly opening his eyes, Nai-Chen clearly saw the dark blue sky above. This dark blue sky is completely different from the normal world. Not only that, there seems to be a faint chill around him. The cold breath is filled with extremely strong ghost energy. This is really the underworld. Nai-Chen was also slightly surprised, and slowly sat up with a slightly painful body. Although the success rate crossed the 2 worlds, it seems that even with the 7-color source stone, the cost of this process is not small. Catching the 7-color source stone slowly falling from the air, Nai-Chen sat up. But soon, he discovered a serious problem. Strange, where is the Empress? Having hurriedly looked around, Nai-Chen found that in the empty environment, there was no trace of Chu Qingyu at all. Only the snow lotus that was originally worn on Chu Qingyu's head was quietly placed beside him, still emitting a little of Chu Qingyu's faint fragrance. The Empress disappeared. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 321. The Empress is missing. System, help me search for the location of Empress Qingyu. Ding, sorry host, the underworld will suppress the spread of spiritual consciousness, and this system cannot open the search function temporarily. But soon, the system's response was also conveyed back. Slowly putting away the snow lotus on the ground, Nai Chen couldn't help but show a trace of solemnity in his expression. Even with the love lock of the heavenly magic weapon, the space laws in the Imperial Mausoleum and the underworld are extremely restricted and cannot be used at all. The Snow Lotus is still here, which means that the distance between Chu Qingyu and himself is not far. The Empress is stronger than himself, and she should be able to wake up a little earlier after the transmission. But why did she disappear? Nai Chen suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. After all, this is the underworld where countless creatures live after death, and there may be some strange laws. If you really encounter danger, I am afraid that even the Emperor will not be able to guarantee your own safety. It seems that the situation cannot be delayed. Now, finding the culprit who caused the riot in the Imperial Mausoleum is secondary. The most important thing is to find Chu Qingyu's whereabouts as soon as possible to ensure her safety. Nai Chen immediately opened his dark pupil and looked around. Soon, the scene within a radius of 100 miles gradually came into his sight. The surroundings were almost all empty and flat land, so dead silent that there was no sign of life, and it seemed that even grass and trees would not grow. And not far from here, there was a city. The city was almost the same as those built by humans. The only difference was that the city was constantly emitting a strong ghost aura, which soared into the sky and spread to all directions. The dark blue ghost aura almost enveloped the entire city. It was enough to see that there were not only a lot of ghosts in the city, but also very likely extremely powerful ghosts. There was no clue about Chu Qingyu's whereabouts. At present, the only way was to go to this ghost city to take a look. Nai Chen stood up and had to make this decision. With a layer of ghost energy covering his body, Nai Chen's body instantly turned into a dark blue color, and seemed a little ethereal, just like a real soul. Heading straight towards the direction of the city, Nai Chen also increased his speed and quickly headed in that direction. Riding the wind, relying on the speed of the Pi High Realm, Nai Chen approached the city in a short time. Slowing down, he also quickly saw the scene in front of him. Above the city hung a few big words, Luji City. At this moment, there were ghost soldiers wearing armor guarding the gate of the city, checking the souls entering one by one. None of the people who entered Luji City were living creatures, all of them were dark blue souls. And those ghost soldiers did not seem to check them strictly, just took a general look, smelled the smell, and let the ghosts passing through into the city. I didn't expect that there is such a ghost city in the underworld. This order is exactly the same as that in the human world. But this way, it is also much more convenient. After observing for a while, Nai Chen quickly walked out of the darkness and mixed into the ghost team heading to Luji City. The team progressed quite quickly, and soon, Nai Chen arrived at the city gate. The two ghost soldiers looked at Nai Chen for a while, and then one of them suddenly got closer, sniffed Nai Chen carefully, and couldn't help saying, "Strange, why do I feel that he is weird, as if there is a breath of a living person? You are crazy, this is the underworld, where are there any living people, don't waste time." The other ghost soldier glared at him, obviously unhappy. The ghost soldier was a little unwilling, sniffed Nai Chen a few more times, and finally shook his head in confusion, and could only sigh. "Okay, maybe I just smelled it wrong, you can go in." "Okay, thank you." After a close call, Nai Chen nodded in response and walked straight into the city. The strength of these ghost soldiers is almost only at the UN building realm. If he wants, a slap is enough to kill them. However, since he has just arrived in the underworld and even the Empress has disappeared, Nai Chen has to be cautious for the time being. Entering the city was unexpectedly smooth. When he walked into it, Nai Chen was also slightly surprised by the scene in the city. Near dusk, the huge Luji city actually has ghosts coming and going in an endless stream. There are many shops around, and even the streets are filled with various stalls. There are ghosts walking around the street, noisy and prosperous, which is completely different from the stereotype of ghost cities. There are even roadside stalls selling food and snacks. I don't know how these ghosts plan to eat them after buying them back. Except that the pedestrians coming and going are all ethereal blue souls. The situation and buildings in this Luji city are exactly the same as those of normal cities in Lanchuan continent. Is this the underworld? Nai-Chen couldn't help but feel a little interested. It is not clear whether this is the case only in the city or the entire underworld. In short, what you see gives you a sense of pure underworld style. The most important thing at the moment is to find the whereabouts of the Empress. Nai-Chen looked around. Soon, his eyes were fixed on a tea house. At this moment, many ghosts were drinking in the tea house, talking about nothing. This kind of place is usually full of good and bad people, and is the most conducive place to gather intelligence. Nai-Chen did not hesitate and quickly walked into the tea house. "Boss, give me a big bowl of tea." Nai-Chen found a place with more ghosts and sat down, and said loudly, "Okay." The kind-looking shop owner, who looked about 60 years old when he was alive, responded enthusiastically. Soon, a bowl of tea was placed on the table. The tea fragrance was rich, and it smelled quite good. "This tea tastes good." Nai-Chen took a sip, and immediately felt that the tea turned into rich spiritual energy, flowing into his body through his mouth. No wonder there are food and drinks on the street. It turns out that these things are made of spiritual energy. The wisdom of these ghosts in the underworld made Nai-Chen a little amazed. It seems that the underworld where countless souls go is not as chaotic as ordinary people imagine. But like the life pattern before death, it seems to be somewhat orderly. After half a cup of tea went into his stomach, in addition to the spiritual energy, Nai-Chen also felt a trace of ghost energy. These ghost energy should be a great tonic for the soul. While he was savoring this cup of tea, in the chaotic sound of the tea house, Nai-Chen suddenly heard a conversation between the boss and a regular customer. "I heard from the gossip that the eldest daughter of the city lord's family seems to be going out to capture souls as husbands tonight. And, as a gift for his daughter's wedding, the city lord seems to have prepared a living creature." "There are living creatures in the underworld? How is that possible? Are you sure you are not kidding?" The regular customer who heard this sentence obviously didn't dare to believe what the boss said.